Weekly Torah readings. Understanding Parashat HaShavua. What are Torah portions? Each Sabbath in synagogues or temples around the world, a separate portion from the Torah called a parashat is publicly read. The Torah is divided into 54 of these parashiot, so that in the course of a year, beginning and ending on the holiday of Simchat Torah, the entire scroll has been recited during Sabbath Shabbat services. We read and study a given Torah portion before it will be recited during Sabbath morning services. Note that in addition to the Saturday morning reading, the beginning of the following week's portion is read during the Sabbath afternoon service and during Monday and Thursday morning services for those that have it. The public reading of the Torah, called Kiryat HaTorah, is a religious ritual distinct from the study of Torah. A Jewish leap year contains 54 weeks, but a non-leap year has only 50 weeks. A leap year adds an additional month called Adar to the usual 12. During the week of Passover and the week of Sukkot, different Torah portions are read. So that leaves 52 weeks for the 54 readings. 2 weeks have double portions. And on non-leap years, only 48 weeks for the 54. 6 weeks have double portions. Note also, a year is a Jewish leap year if the number year Mar 19 is one of the following: 0, 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, or 17. The origin of the weekly Torah portion. Jewish tradition states that Ezra the scribe and the 120 elders of the Great Assembly, 4th century before Mashiach, was the originator of the weekly Torah reading schedule for Klal Yisrael. The Great Assembly, which included Mordecai of the Esther story, Daniel, Nehemiah, Zechariah, and Zerubbabel, among other notables, is also said to have instituted other traditional practices, such as the recitation of Kodesh on Sabbath. The idea that prayer should occur 3 times a day, the structure of the Amidah prayer, the recitation of various blessings before eating, and so on. The triennial cycle of readings appears to be older than the yearly cycle, which developed during the Babylonian exile, and was probably used when Yeshua was here. This plan reads through the Torah in 3 years, though the way the readings are arranged is a bit strange, since they skip 2/3 of the yearly portion through every cycle. That's the triennial cycle of reading. The Torah blessings and aliyot. The Torah portions themselves are divided into sections called aliyot, literally ascent, and it is customary for a gebayah, a synagogue official, to call up people from the congregation to recite a blessing before and after the section. The Shabbat services, each parashat is divided into 7 aliyot, with a concluding portion called the maftar, recited by the person who will also recite the half-Torah blessings. This means that on a given Shabbat, 8 people will be called to recite blessings over the Torah. The procedure for making aliyah. The person assigned aliyah is called up to the Bima Torah reading table by his Hebrew name. The cantor will point to the first word in the scroll that begins the portion. The person then touches the margin area closest to that point with his tzitzit, and then touches the tzitzit to his lips. Standing directly in front of the scroll with both hands on the handle, Etz Kayam, he recites the Baruchu and the first Torah blessing. He then releases the Etz Kayam and moves to the right to allow the cantor to read the portion. When the cantor is finished, the person again holds both Etz Kayam and recites the second Torah portion. After this, the next person is called up to the bima, and the process repeats until all 7 aliyot and the concluded mater are completed. What are Haftorah portions? The weekly Torah portion is followed by an additional portion from the Nevi'im prophets called Haftorah. It is thought that the Haftorah readings were derived from the Greek Hasmonean dynasty, late Second Temple period, approximately 200 years BCE, ruled over the land of Israel. These Hellenists forbade the public reading of Torah in order to dissipate Jewish solidarity, etc., under their rule. So, instead of the weekly Torah portion, the clever Jewish leadership instituted the weekly reading of a portion from the Nevi'im which contained ideas which were similar to the Torah reading of the week. The Maftar and Haftorah. The Maftar additionally is the last aliyah of the Torah reading service on Shabbat, which usually comprises the last few verses of the week's Torah portion on festivals and certain special Sabbaths. The Matif is a different reading. See the table below. The person who received the Matif also recites the Haftorah, a reading from the prophets, and the Haftorah blessing that go with it. The Haftorah and Maftar are connected to show that the books of the prophets must be grounded in the study of Torah. And just reading that, listening to this will give you some understanding as to why you see on your weekly Sabbath conference email the reading of the weekly Torah schedule.